it's like they just, I don't know. It's just
You
like
know,
they were just like wandering through and going to these like, I don't know.
it's
Go ahead,
interesting.
Steve.
By the way, we're live, everybody. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. But
Hi.
and we're talking. Hey, guess what? We're talking about Star Trek. Who would have thought?
What a surprise!
But well, I think it's really
And a
I think
check mark
it's
for today.
we've been talking about because Carl brought up before we went on the air how I have said before, and I think we mentioned it Friday night. Dana and I were talking in our Dispossessed live stream about how the alien cultures in the Dispossessed seem a lot more sort of complex than a lot of the societies in, for example, Star Trek. And Carl pointed out that, in more recent Star Trek shows, they have actually tried to diversify those cultures a lot. And then Isaiah was just talking, and it really, like, it made me think about how different fans sort of attach to different parts of the things that they're fans of. Because to me, like, I acknowledge that a lot of the aliens in Star Trek have been kind of samey, at least for a lot of the history of the franchise, maybe not as much so recently. And I notice that, and I kind of make fun of it, and I sort of just mark it. It doesn't really bother me all that much. I mean, it could be, they could have done a lot better at diversifying that, but because that's not the point that I connect to the show at. Like, I notice that, but I like was like, I think Eric said before we went on the air, like and also I think Carl made this point too. Like, they started out as allegories. Like the Klingons were the Soviets. That's why they were all the same, because that's all they needed to be. They were just the Federation was the United States, and the Klingons were the Soviets, and that was the whole point of that.
The United States being the good guys, of course.
And it doesn't, and that's, so it didn't, the sameness of it doesn't really bother me, and just the like. But if you are really into the world building and you do want to see the characters explore like different parts of the galaxy and visit differently and like that, then I can see how that might limit the show for you, for sure.
Yeah, I'm into both. I'm into both. It's like I like the message they tell us, but I'm also like into the world building because I'm also a very visual person.
But at the same time, you're limited. Like in the Dispossessed, yes, we do get to see the different cultures, but that's because it's effectively one planet and its moon, and we don't go anywhere else. And Star Trek goes like all over the place. That's like literally
quadrants.
It's in the where nobody's gone before. It's in the premise of the show. So you don't get as much time that you can delve into each individual culture and all of its various nuances, because you've promised that you're going to go into all sorts of different cultures. So you do get diversity in that sense.
Yeah.
It's just diversity from planet to planet to planet to planet instead of between the individual cultures within a single planet. So
you only have 42 minutes to establish a culture. There's only so much room to work with there.
It's because there's
we went live, but because Dana brought up the idea that we had at that time when like TNG and DS9 were airing, seasons were 22, 24 episodes long. Now our seasons are like 10 episodes long. And I was actually reading an article about not Star Trek, but B5 and how...
Which is on HBO Max now.
Which is right. And it was just talking about that, how it's now streaming on HBO Max. And it was one of the first long serial arc, storytelling arc shows that you couldn't just kind of pick up in the middle. But one of the kind of downfalls that it kind of ran into, which a lot of shows ran into at that time, including Star Trek, was the need for filler shows because it was 22 episodes long per season.
Yeah.
And that was just the format of seasons back then. And they were just they were questioning like how cohesive and how much better received, absent the advances in technology for CGI and whatnot, that B5 might have been received in a bit more of a compact storytelling form that was still long form, but not forced to have quite as much padding.
Yeah.
Well, really, I've been thinking about that in terms of sequential storytelling and ongoing storytelling. In terms of Steve and me going back and forth about the Batman stuff, which has been around for like freaking ever, but continually. and just what happens when you have 22 episodes and for a season, and you want to have a seasonal arc, and how you structure that, and you keep things moving forward, and you don't let the viewer get bored, but at the same time you don't get ahead of yourself, and how you work with the pacing. It's just really interesting in terms of audience engagement and structure. It presents some very, very real challenges that are fun to think about.
I think also it's because one of the
hang on, let Eric talk.
one of the reasons there's all the aliens look so humanoid is because we're human, right? And we like stories about us. There's a famous quote by Matt Colville. He says, we're all monkeys and we like looking at and thinking about other monkeys.
Right.
And that's what all storytelling is just we're us. It's us in some form. So
I agree.
That's certainly us projecting.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That, and they had to be played by human actors, and
well, there's the limitation of we are.
Okay, sorry, but now I have like 3 points to make at this point. I'm sorry to intervene, but it's really hard for me to intervene. I just can't seem to find the right moment. Every time I do it, they tell me like, let Eric talk. Because
well, now it's you, so talk, buddy.
Okay. So first of all, about aliens. Like you were talking about this idea that most writers are human. And I've been trying to comprehend this trope, which I read about recently. This idea, like, have you ever heard of orange and blue morality? The idea that alien species or aliens or like sentient creatures, whatever, that are not us, that are different to us, might have their moral compass completely alien to us. Like they might think that color purple is good and color orange is bad, and that T-bots are extremely bad and you need to exterminate them or whatever. And they have it all good and logical. And so I don't think if you, in our human terms, can even write a good story to this basis. Like the story which is not cosmic horror, like you're horrified of this alien creature which is different and seems really scary to you, but it's perfectly logical for itself. So yeah, we probably should humanize a lot of our aliens that we have around for our media, because otherwise it's not a good story. And Steve talked about good stories, which is like, here comes my second point. And I've been watching Battlestar Galactica recently, and I mean, probably a lot of you have also watched this series as well. I mean, probably some of you haven't, and I won't spoil it completely, but Steve was recently talking about this idea that if you want to have a good Star Trek premise, then you need a moral idea to convey. You need a thing to say with your story, because I proposed this anthill idea and I didn't really know where it goes morally. And then I was like watching Battlestar Galactica after that. And I was sitting there and thinking, damn, this show is not really bothering by telling any good moral message. This show is really bothering itself by telling us that this is hard. Like, those people are not doing good things. Those people are choosing between a bad thing and a very bad thing. And sometimes they choose very bad because that's what they want. And no character like is perfect, and no character is because I don't think it's a big spoiler, but anybody remembers the abortion episode, the abortion question episode? When they have like only 40,000 people left, like humans, 40,000 humans left in the galaxy, and they basically have to ban it because otherwise they die. And they have all those moral things talking about it because they are like quite progressive at that point. They are presented as this very progressive form of United States you have. They're in some cases more progressive than the current United States, even though they have those cultural differences. And I will hold off my third point to later when and if this discussion goes to Batman, because it's more about comics. So yeah, thanks. I'll be here, like just sitting here, maybe intervening sometimes.
Nick Anderson, do you remember your point?
Sorry,
Nick Anderson, do you remember your point you were trying to interject?
Yes. Okay. So it's like I'll get through this as fast as I can. Firstly, one thing that I'm really looking forward to when we eventually make it to the stars and like meet other cultures and whatnot are people accidentally flirting with each other and this things like that. Like in DS9,
yes,
when
the Cardassian.
What was his name? Yes, and he was annoyed with her, so she thought that he was prepositioning her. That's gonna happen so much once we step out there. It's gonna be great. This is gonna be so much cringe. The other, I also just wanted to remind everybody that
Not
several
everybody
of
keeps
the
their genitals in the same place.
I just wanted to remind I just wanted to remind people that several of the species from Star Trek, you know, Klingons and Romulans and Vulcans and so on, are essentially human because we all came from one precursor species
That's
that
true.
jerked it in all these
Yep.
planets' oceans some time
Yeah.
ago.
Yep.
That's true. They did a TNG episode about that
So
because
when
It's a
I
nice
say that they're
post-creative
all basically
rationalization.
human, when I say they're human, I don't mean that they're just humans with costumes. I mean they're literally just us.
I did
And
not
just a
know
short
that.
point
Like, I
here, this
totally
can
did
be
not
our
know.
future.
yeah, they did an
Can be
episode.
our future if we're alone in the universe. Like, if we spread out through the stars and then people just forget that they were each other's siblings eventually, then this can be our future if we are alone in the universe.
Yeah. Well,
Everybody
yeah,
can be humanoid in the future.
They did it. They did a TNG episode that was a pretty good episode, and normally normally this kind of thing annoys me when they have to establish like an in-universe reason for something that is just because they need human actors to put on makeup to play the characters. But you know, so they did they did a TNG episode that established that the major, like basically all of the alien races that we ever see in Star Trek, the ones that are humanoid, are descended from a common species that seeded its genetic material throughout the galaxy like billions and billions and billions of years ago.
The progenitors.
Yeah.
Well, it explains things well in universe, but it's also Star Trek botching evolution in the way it always does. And it's pre-designed to go to a certain point.
Yeah,
I think someone made a video about evolution in Star Trek.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah, I know. That sounds familiar.
Apparently, if we go through high speed, we turn into newts.
Yeah, it's exactly.
They've gotten it wrong several times.
They got better.
It's exactly. He turned me into a newt. I got better. But it's like mildly irritating because, you know, it's like do we really need an episode to explain why the aliens all look like people? We know, right? We know what the reason is.
2 episodes to explain why Klingons look different now.
Yeah, exactly. It was better than that. It was better than Enterprise taking 2 episodes in its last season to explain why Klingons have smooth foreheads in classic Star Trek when we all know the reason. And they
didn't need to do that.
They didn't need to do that. And it was already handled beautifully in Deep Space Nine when they went to they did the time travel episode back to Trouble with Tribbles, and they're looking at the Klingons there, and then they're looking at Worf, and they're like,
they are Klingons.
And they're like, Worf basically says it's a long story. He says it's a long story, and we don't talk about it. And that's all you need. You need just acknowledge that yes, that's how they looked. There's presumably some explanation, but who fucking cares? Who
nerds do, Steve?
Cares?
Nerds care.
Well,
nerds care.
It's
and Rick Berman.
It's two subcultures. One is an analog for the Soviet Union, and the other one is an analog for mysticism of the Asian people.
Oh wow, yeah.
I do want to say this in response to what Dana said about the distinction between what it can be easily televised and the freedom of the imagination in writing. That's true, and I don't know anyone who would contest that. But I think that the onus is on the writers, and you're right. Who needs an explanation when you've got human beings playing beings that we don't even know, that we're inventing? But I think that just like you can have a thin Vulcan and a fuller bodied Vulcan without needed explanation, a short one, someone who is differently abled, you can also do that subtly with, I don't care for humans. And so you've got some racism going. You've got difference in how they're not all cut from a cloth. That's the fault of the writers. You don't have to have a gelatinous creature necessarily, but you can show, especially if because presumably there are that Vulcans or are on more than just their home world. So if you encounter someone who doesn't carry the state a line or the party line, if you will, that's subtly adding some diversity. And you can do that and you don't have to dwell on it. It's just writing it. And I think that sort of the expectation that a viewing audience is stupid or is not able to understand nuance, especially when we come from a society that is nuanced, is really lazy, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and we saw a really good example of just what you're talking about, not on a Star Trek show this year, but in the second season of The Mandalorian, where it was revealed that actually the version of Mandalorian culture that Mando follows is not only not the only one, but is apparently perceived as kind of a weird minority by other Mandalorians. Like the whole deal about never taking your helmet off, like that's like the way that he was taught, but all Mandalorians aren't like that. And that was kind of a cool reveal. And it wasn't like it wasn't a huge deal made about it, but it was like just that little bit of complexity added to what up until that point had been a very much, it seemed like really a monoculture. And then there's just a little glimpse of like, oh, it's more than that.
Mandalorians are an interesting concept. They are not a species.
Yeah.
How do you eat if you don't take off your helmet?
The thing I liked about it there was that it was they took his character and he was part of a cult within a cult.
Right.
Not only being Mandalorian, but they were part of Death Watch, but they were actually an offshoot of Death Watch.
Yeah, they're very, very small cult inside a cult inside a cult. Yeah.
But one of my favorite things about supplementary media to shows, the shows and whatnot, is just getting to see how the average normal person looks at all these crazy characters from the movies. And even like the Clone Wars had this episode where you see what the Kaminoans, those long-necked people, think of the Jedi, and they think those Jedi are a strange cult. It's like, oh wow, they just come out and say it. Everyone thinks they're wackos.
They're weirdos. Yeah, they're religious fanatics. Like, why do we let them run everything?
Definitely.
Yeah. The other thing interesting inside Star Wars is that like, from what I understand, the general populace just thinks Jedi and Sith, they're just both religious. It's the same religion. They're just different extremists on either side of the same religion. And
different
they're just like, oh,
those.
Yeah, just like, oh, those guys are those religious guys over there.
Yeah, exactly.
They're all weird. I mean, they're just weird in different ways, right?
I mean, I'm sorry that we drink wine at church. I hate the wine at church too.
It's not up to me, okay?
You know what? You want to know something really funny? Okay, so you know how one of the most messed up things the Jedi did is they would basically abduct babies and bring them into the Order because you gotta get them while they're young. Well, apparently there was one woman who decided to sue, I think, at least the Order and possibly the Galactic Republic to get her baby back. And it wound up being this huge scandal that went on for months and months. And the Jedi stayed resolute. And eventually, she just got so sucked up in all the fame and attention and money that she was getting from her story that she forgot to get her kid back.
Well, that's a good way to dodge the issue and ruin the story, isn't it?
I want to see that Dr. Phil episode.
Yeah, about Star Wars again. You were talking about Jedi and Sith, but I mean, if you're toxic or whatever cult basically allows you to move objects with your mind, isn't it like kind of beneficial to enroll in this cult? Like, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure most of us would go straight to dark side, like right away.
That is a good point. Like,
it's just that simple.
It is tempting.
Yeah, but if you look at it deeply, I mean, from like a standpoint of whatever the bite model or whatever it would be, Jedi are probably more toxic than the Sith, because they do the child abduction and they do the whole Sith probably too, but we've seen Jedi do it much more than the Sith, and there are only two of the Sith usually. Except for all the times when there aren't. And
they don't teach you how to handle
so well. That's like Star Wars in a nutshell. It's this way all the time, except when it's not.
They tell you to ignore your emotions instead of learning to process them in a healthy way. The whole Jedi Orthodoxy creates Darth Vaders. Nobody should be surprised.
Orthodoxy means not thinking, not having to think.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds familiar. Where's that from? Is that from a book or something?
You know where that's from.
I know where
little...
And I mean, that was like a moral victory of Luke Skywalker for me always, that he proved that to be on the light side of the Force, you don't have to be like away from it.
Yeah.
You can love, you can have friends, and you can have like a family, and you can have people who are not like you, close to you. And he basically defeated by this notion not just the Sith, but like he also defeated the Jedi of the Old. And that's what I like about him, like saying it out loud in episode 8, that basically Jedi of the Old, they were stupid. And they basically, they couldn't see like the blatant thing that was Darth Sidious, like literally near them. I mean, he was probably good at it, but in the end, he was like a chaotic evil Sith Lord. If you think about it, you really know who he is.
Yeah,
very last
I always wondered why, like, they said Anakin's going to bring balance to the Force, and it's like,
what does that mean? Yeah,
like you have nothing but thousands of years of Jedi and no Sith that you know of. If you're going to bring balance, what does that mean?
Yeah, yeah, right. Why were you looking forward to this
right now? I don't know if balance is what you want.
He's going to be balanced to the Force, not necessarily balanced to the Order. So, I mean, essentially, like we said, it means whatever we want it to mean.
Exactly.
Yeah. The writers decide. We don't know. It just sounded good at the time.
Just press the I believe button.
Exactly. Just press the I believe button.
The back history would be a lot more logical and noble in the hands of a better writer.
Yeah. One very last thing I want to point out.
What were you going to say, Nick?
To me. Being a Jedi, the hardest part would just be not accidentally cutting something off. Because there's a thing. So you've got the robes, and sometimes they're wearing like 3 layers, and those are really heavy and hard to move, and especially if you get caught in the rain. So, but then you have the lightsabers, which because the blade is like virtually weightless. So it's really easy for a normal person to accidentally swing too hard and clip off their own leg or something. So think of it this way: you're wearing like 100 pounds of all this stuff, and you've got a sword that barely weighs anything. So you're having to swing as hard as you can to compensate for the clothing, but you also have to not swing too hard to compensate for the weightless death beam. How do you do that?
Yeah, I love how
they're very, very, very carefully.
They use the Force. They use the Force as they're fighting as well.
And they train for tens of years for something. You know? Probably for this.
When you watch
how many of them cut themselves?
When you watch the lightsaber duels in the prequels, you can really tell, like, oh, so George saw some Hong Kong action movies in the 80s because you know, because you're right, like especially in episode 1, which has
that was clear,
which like the only good scene in the whole goddamn movie is the lightsaber duel at the end between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, but and it's an awesome fight and it's an awesome scene but you know, it's like there's that shot of Obi-Wan when he's like, I think it's when he's caught in like the force field thing, and then it opens up and he's like running and he's like twirling his lightsaber gratuitously. No reason to do that. It's like, why are you twirling the fucking sword that can cut through anything for no reason while you're running through this really narrow passage?
Cool.
It's gonna,
exactly.
Well, that's the only reason. That's the only reason,
style.
but it's, I mean, yeah, and it's like I say, it's the only scene in that whole movie worth watching. But I mean, if we're gonna like deconstruct it, it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Don't move it.
But also if we're going to deconstruct that scene, I do like what Red Letter Media said about that too, because like this is kind of like when you're thinking about it after it, not while as you watch it. But some people had this experience while as they're watching. Okay, I'll let you go.
I have a post 2020 explanation for that.
Oh boy,
he's getting rid of all the coronavirus in front of him as he's running.
That works too. That works too.
I love like when the last field opens up, Obi-Wan starts doing this little jog, you know, like this little warm-up exercise.
Yeah, he's like, come on.
Because he was dancing. He doing all the choreography, and he just saw his Jedi Master die right in front of him.
He's getting up for
it. If they did like in Return of the Jedi, where Luke hears that like Darth Vader was going to tempt his sister, he just loses it, and it's like not parry thrust, starts swinging wildly with pure force, and the operatic music builds up. I still love that scene. So it would be better than that, but the movie
here's the thing
sucked.
I've realized. This is the reason that scene is so good, and this kind of goes for all the prequels. The best scenes are where nobody's talking, when the actors just get to emote with their faces.
Yes.
Like whenever no words. Oh God,
when Christian Hansen is just
his ability to write dialogue.
when Christian Hansen doesn't have to read these crappy scripts and he can just make a scary face, he sells it.
No, and
really,
not only that,
there really should have been some people to tell George Lucas no.
Yes.
Oh my God, wouldn't that have been nice?
Like
it's a collaborative effort.
Wasn't there somebody in the room?
Like, George, what are you doing?
No, apparently not.
Somebody,
No,
there should have been somebody. There's that. Here's the problem. There's that famous scene from the behind the scenes footage that again really was prominently featured in one of the Red Letter Media reviews, where it's like they've screened like the final cut of the movie for the first time, and then they're all just kind of sort of sitting there quietly trying to decide like what to say, and and it's like why didn't any of them see that these are like studio people, these are producers and executives involved with the making of the movie. Why didn't any of them see a cut of the movie before that? Somebody should have seen that this was going wrong before we get to final cut, and then they're sitting there in the screening room going, maybe they did, and
they're just like somebody's gonna do something, right?
Right.
I don't want to be the one.
Somebody's gonna say something to him, right?
You know that's how it is at work.
And then they did it.
Yeah.
Yes,
well,
exactly.
I mean,
so you know that happens at work, where it's just like, I hope someone says something. I hope someone says something, because I know from my experience, if I say something, if I bring this up, there's going to be a whole thing. Have to get an account manager involved, have to get production control involved, have to. But then I just do it. It's like, okay, what's wrong with this? I'm not passing this out of the stockroom until this gets like resolved. Is this a problem? And then it's just like, but someone has to do that. But if like, it's so easier to pass the buck and to just like have someone else do it, then they're just like, I'm sure someone else is going to like say something, but what if everyone thinks just like you and just doesn't?
Yeah.
So at the end,
it's a known thing.
There's something else. There's something else about that lightsaber duel in episode 1. That, I mean, I totally agree with you, Nick, that it's the lack of dialogue, because the dialogue in most Star Wars movies is pretty bad,
and the directing,
and it's especially bad in the prequels. But it's one of the only scenes in that movie, and indeed in any of the prequels, where it's clear what the heroes want. Their goal is clear, and it seems like they care about accomplishing it. It's like they actually have passion and emotion. The scene has stakes. It matters what happens in the scene. It matters who wins the fight. There's so many scenes in that movie where it's like things are just happening, and you have no sense of what people want, what is driving them, what their goal is, what difference it would make if they make a different choice. It's so muddled and just sort of pointless. And then you have this little island of a scene where it's like, oh, I get this. It's so simple. It's so direct, and
also,
they
the background there is CGI, but the characters aren't, which is a nice switch.
I'll say this. Oh, go ahead, Nick.
I could just be remembering things, but on that note, Steve, like I love the pod race scene. It's a little long, but in isolation, I think it's amazingly directed, and the whole idea of this kid, go into the race of his life to win his freedom, to leave this outhouse of a planet. Imagine how much more powerful that would have been if it was said like very clearly to him beforehand, hey, if you win this, you're set for life.
Oh yeah,
you're gone. But then he really wants to win.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll say this about
the video game.
I made sorry. I was gonna say I'll say this about the prequels. Despite the bad dialogue, the bad writing, George told the story that he wanted to tell. By hell or high water, come hell or high water, he told his story, which is good because as I like the sequels as individual movies, but cohesively they're a mess, right? And because they kept changing what the story is. So I'll give the prequels some credit because they are at least cohesive, and George told his story the way he wanted to tell it.
Well, and there is something compelling.
Beyond that, I mean, we talk about the dialogue. The dialogue throughout the original trilogy as well is not exactly.
It was wooden,
right?
No,
I mean,
it had moments.
That one of the best lines of dialogue out of that was entirely ad-libbed.
Yep.
I do have one thing that I want to bring up, though,
Go ahead.
for the prequels. In my opinion, the prequels, they should have used the same cameras, the same technology that they made with the original trilogy, and it would have made it look better to me. Because there's something always weird when you look at something chronologically and something that's a prequel looks way more advanced. Everything's much shinier and better tech in that. It just takes you away from that immersion. But if they had gone through the hard work of hunting up the original cameras and making all the
hard
I think it
work,
would have really.
they were going to do work.
You know, I'm not a fan of Star Wars as a form of Star Trek, but one of the things that the distinction between the three original Star Wars movies to me was there was sort of a, and forgive me if I'm not describing it correctly, but they were not making fun of, but they were sort of hearkening back to those serialized stories that they would tell that my grandparents, I guess, would have gone to see. Those serial movies, Flash Gordon, etc. That's what I thought it was. I think that with the prequels, which I thought were all crap.
Change frequencies. You're being jammed a little. That's a little hard to hear you.
But I thought that the prequels tried to make it take it seriously. The fun to me was drained out, and I just by happenstance I was listening to Late Seating yesterday evening as I was working in my art room. And I heard Steve, I think it was you say that this Jedi Order, instead of dealing with the major things that were going on in that universe, slavery being one of them on that one particular planet, that they were futzing about with minutia, basically. And so it just makes the whole thing seem stupid. And this attempt, I guess, much like when you were saying, Steve, earlier about trying to explain why human beings playing these aliens look like human beings, it's unnecessary. Just tell the story and tell it with some style, wit, and the prequels. The only Star Wars film that I really like is Rogue One. The rest of them are not interesting.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing that I like about them is, okay, you could say that George Lucas wanted us to feel one way about the films and they came out a little different. But the thing I like is that when you really think about it, the Jedi had it coming, and the Republic was already like coming apart at the seams. Like
and it was an inside job.
They established that there's corruption everywhere. That the Jedi, they're just stuffy bureaucrats. It seems like, of course, everything was going to fall apart. These are such crappy organizations. But I wonder if George Lucas even meant it that way, or if he wants us to think that these are good organizations and we're supposed to be surprised that they fell. Just depends
it's tough to tell. It's tough to tell because George. I mean, and I that's another thing I wanted to mention since we're. I mean, what Eric said a minute ago about at least give the prequels this much. It was a filmmaker telling the story that he wanted to tell. George Lucas, just as a human being, seems like a good dude. And I mean, one of the things about like the when we were sort of at the peak of the backlash against the prequels, there was a lot of sort of vilifying of George himself, like he had done something bad, he had done something morally wrong by making these what many of us consider bad movies, and actually he seems like a good dude, and he spends his money developing like educational programs for kids. He built like, I think there was the story about how like his neighbors, the people on the next ranch over, like were giving him a hard time, so he gave some of his land to build low-income housing because he knew that would piss off his neighbors, and also now there's low-income housing that wasn't there before. And he just seems
my respect for him has like I've risen knowing that actually.
He just seems like a good dude. And there's just really weird little things. Like there's that random like YouTube video of someone who's like recording a video on a city street, and George Lucas just randomly comes in behind him and just kind of looks at the camera for a second and then goes into the building that he was going to. Just like, I mean, he just seems like a cool guy. And the fact that I think 3 of his movies are pretty terrible doesn't change the fact that he's a good dude. And
it's like the opposite of the conversation that we usually have about separating the artist from their work.
Right.
It's like, can we still appreciate a good work when it turns out that the artist is not really that great a person and may in fact be a horrible person? It's like,
I mean, Steve, you Steve, you also love Superman Return, and you will still love it, even though the artists like Kevin Spacey and Bryan Singer are terrible people. And Zack Snyder might be a great person as well, but I'm not going to enjoy his movies other than like Watchmen.
I think what you were like, I was just kind of sorry, I was just like jumping out of my skin over the thing. But yeah, because it is very much like the kind of the same, but the opposite of J.K. Rowling.
Oh yeah,
Like a lot of the backlash. I actually think a lot of the backlash against George Lucas was the prequels, but also the continually tinkering with the original.
That was part of it too. Yeah.
And that's where I kind of sympathize a bit more, because he wouldn't lay his hands off the art and leave it alone.
They still haven't. Aren't they still tweaking stuff every time they
Yeah,
release
but at
it?
the same time, that's like that's classic, writer's dilemma is that the idea. I think it was even Twain who said writing is never, or a story is never finished. It's just due.
Right. Exactly.
One of the reasons I can't be a writer.
And when you're George Lucas, you have the opportunity to be like, yeah, but what about this? Yeah, and people don't tell you no.
But here's the problem. So many people say Star Wars is better than Star Trek, and yet Star Wars is cheating by constantly modifying their game. They're not going,
Yeah.
It's not fair.
To Dana's point, one of the reasons I have trouble being a writer.
Hang on, let Eric talk.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, to Dana's point, one of the reasons I have trouble being a writer is because I'm an editor. So let me just change this.
Eric, I'm jealous because one of the reasons I have trouble being a writer is that I just don't like writing.
Fair enough.
C-Mac, you were saying something. You wanted to finish your thought?
I was just going to say that as far as the problem with J.K. Rowling is that as far as separating her from the work and death of the author and that concept, that she just keeps inserting herself into the conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And obviously the fact that she's still alive and she still financially benefits from her creation.
But also it's kind of like the things like she tries to be like woke and progressive by saying Dumbledore is like gay, and she said that at the time when she was finished writing the books, and if she left it at that would be fine. But she continued to write more stuff and didn't mention that, didn't have it on screen that Dumbledore is gay.
Well, Dumbledore is the gayest man who ever lived everywhere except the books and movies.
Yes, exactly. That's something that the Console of Geeks did an episode a long time ago about the LGBT debate. Again, back to Star Wars as well. The writer for Solo, I like it. It's a decent movie, but not a great movie, said that Lando Calrissian is pansexual. We didn't see that in the movie.
Yeah.
Don't tell us that like this person's queer, this person's queer, this person's queer, but not show it or something like that. It's representation matters. I could go on something else, but Isaiah has been trying to show us something very cool for a while. So Isaiah, I'll give you the floor to show you something.
So
speak up. Yeah.
So for I think for it was maybe it was Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, but I made an X-wing helmet.
Nice. That's cool looking.
Very
nice.
Let me look at it a bit further. Wait a second. Where is Isaiah?
I'm right here.
Isaiah, can you put it on for us? I'd love to see.
I'll try. Hold on.
You won't be able to hear us because he's taking off his headphones.
Headphones off is a good thing.
I don't say anything important anyway, so who cares?
No, I can't. I made it for somebody who has a different size head than me.
If I could just add real quick, that I think that the actor for Dumbledore, he found out that his character was gay, and that's when he hit his head in that one scene. He found out about that.
Yeah, that's probably it.
Isaiah, talk.
You guys see me now?
Yeah, man.
Nice.
That's cool.
So yeah, I made that for the Rise of Skywalker movie. I was going to make the whole uniform, but I didn't have time.
So. A true cross player. I did actually for the premiere. Where is it? Went with the full R2D2 get up with my sweaters and my R2D2 leggings to like one of the premieres. And another friend, he has costumes because he's a pirate already, so he already had the robes and just went as a Jedi. So yes, we nerds have like a cosplay uniforms just at the ready. And
I was gonna say, I love that you had the R2D2 hat like literally within arm's reach. You were just like, let me show you.
It's part of my feature from my Twitch channel. Just attached to like type like exclamation point hats and see my hats, and then if you donate $1 to me on my Twitch channel, then I will put on a new hat based on my list. But anyway, that's
also I'm also putting lights in my tricorder here.
That is cool. Wow. It'll be legit Star Trek then, buddy.
For my uniform, and I also got this in the mail today. If you guys ever saw this movie,
that's a good movie.
I like that movie a lot. Blast from the Past. It's from
Walken.
Yes. Yes, a Blast from the Past is starring Brandon Fraser, who went to Cornell University in Seattle, and it's Lisa Silverstone or something like that. Or
Alicia Silverstone.
Alicia Silverstone. Yeah, from Clueless.
Yes, from Clueless, yes, which is why Isaiah loves it because it's 90s. But it's about like basically a kid if his family was in like a nuclear fallout bunker underneath their house for 30 years, and then like he finally rises up and it's the 90s again. So a kid grew up from 60s mentalities going around in the 90s, and that's what it is. That's why it's called Blast from the Past. Interesting movie. I do actually recommend it. Anyways, floor's open.
Very good comedy. It's like I've always liked those episodes, like those like stories where like you'll get the people from Star Trek that either go back in time to the 90s, and like Tuvok was like when they were like on Venice Beach, he was like, we could have beamed down with our uniforms on. I doubt anyone would have noticed.
Yeah, exactly. Why do we even bother with the civilian clothes? Nobody cares.
Wasn't that their experience filming Star Trek 4 that nobody bothered them when they were in costume?
Yeah, but they were in civilian clothes, but still, yeah.
Here's the thing that I'm pretty embarrassed by and why I've been feverishly clicking this whole time. My story has a dog in it that has an eye patch because he's a pug and he ran face first into a wall one day and his eye fell out.
Naturally.
Which happens to a shocking number of real pugs. I just thought it would be funny if the Pirate Queen's pet has an eye patch even if she doesn't. But with this latest book, I've been drawing the eye patch on the wrong side. So I'm having to go back through those pages now and re-edit it to like you draw an eye patch over here and then draw an eye over here.
Because you know the nerds are going to like say it's on the wrong side.
Just say a wizard did it.
Wait, no, you caught it before you produced it and sent it out, right?
Yeah. Yes, I'm still
okay,
working
well then
on
no big deal. Seriously,
just
like I would be embarrassed if it was
it's-
like afterwards and somebody called me on and I'd never noticed.
You've heard about the thing with Young Frankenstein, right? With the hump. He had the hump, and different days of filming, he put it on opposite sides, and they didn't notice for like a week.
Marty
So
Feldman,
What's supposed to be on the other side? What?
But you see, the annoying thing about it is having to do this with a mouse. Because I don't have a tablet, I draw with pencils and paper. So here I'm having to like redraw these scenes with the clicker.
Yikes.
Yes. Fun.
Can I offer something really briefly? I have become a diehard fan. I think one of my questions about Krav Maga might have shown it, of Stephen Stuffy. And my partner has as well. Initially, and he did not like it. I'll just put it that way. He wouldn't want to watch it with me. He thought it was ridiculous. He so loves this. Now that whenever there's one of the programs that sort of does the Mystery Science Theater 3000, that's his program too. I think like you, he loves that.
Oh yeah,
he loved that show. But I can stop. I can just say I've got one on, and they're doing the Mystery Science. He will stop everything and watch it. So I just wanted to say that to you, partly because good writing is important, and Stephen Stuffy's really. It's really subversive because you're saying, at least to me, so many things, and you're doing it in such a loving, easy way, especially when you introduce the Stuffy and Friends, which was my sort of entry into Stephen Stuffy, or to the Stuffy and Friends now, moving forward. It's just amazing. And I've been watching them over and over because they are so well written. I know that you might be harsher on yourself than I will ever be with any other artist except for George Lucas. But
everyone's harsh on themselves. So
okay, I have a question about.
Hang on. Carl, keep going. Keep praising me, please.
Steve, no pressure on the next series.
Yeah, I think because so as I think we've talked about a little bit on streams before, like Dana and I are writing the next Stephen Stuffy and Friends series together, and by together I mean she's written all the scripts so far, but we are collaborating, and eventually I think you know I'll grab an episode. I'll be like, I want to do I need to do this episode or something. But,
I hope so.
Well, because you keep having ideas, you keep having ideas, and as long as you take the lead and you're like, I want to start episode 4 or whatever, I'm not going to be like, fuck you.
You know, it is imperative that I ask this. Okay, so are you rebooting it from scratch? Or are you doing the sitcom thing where it's like, oh hey, it's crazy how those characters all died, huh?
The sitcom thing. They're not going to be dead. They're not going to be dead, but they will be off the show. Yeah, they're not. Yeah, the new show will be in continuity with the old show. It will acknowledge the changes, you know, and the absence.
Just all the girl characters will be gone.
Yeah, they're to be replaced by new girl characters with different voices and different, completely different characters. But yeah,
so you're not gonna. I'm gonna miss Maleficent.
More and more. I just find it so amusing that the more you deny that you are Steve from the Ensign's log, and the more I hear about these collaborations and how.
I will miss Millicent. She was a
I will miss Millicent too. I will miss Millicent too.
I'm sorry, I have an important
go ahead.
Steven Stuffy question because I can't seem to get myself into this show. I mean, it's hard for me to get myself into any shows for that matter. I tried getting myself into Ensign's log and it just didn't happen yet. But I've heard the first episode. It was interesting. But about Steven Stuffy, I've probably already asked it someday, but I just don't remember what you answered, Steve. So, or maybe anyone here, where should I start? What do I start?
At the beginning.
At the beginning.
A very good place to start.
And then come to the end.
I would say I think it started to become the show that it eventually became around season 4.
Yeah.
Because you did the same evolution as television, where it started off as a bunch of standalone episodes where you could watch them in any order. It was the same. Then you started serializing it.
Exactly. The serialized storytelling starts around season 4, I think. So that if you really want like a good sort of jumping on point, that's probably the best point. But honestly,
I'm sorry, I laugh because the data portal says Steve got orders from the studios to kill off all the old characters and make room for the new Transformers toys.
Yes. Watch for the Rodimus Prime character coming soon to Stuffy and Friends.
Steve, I was going to say I'm just
a Rodimus Prime toy.
Yeah, exactly. What? Go ahead, Eric.
Oh, I was just going to say I'm just glad you're not pulling an Aunt Viv on us.
Yes. There's something different about
that is a burn.
That's awesome. What
also,
the new
Steve, I wanted to say
the new Millicent.
That video where you went over that. I am so happy that I found the one other person on the planet who doesn't hate Hot Rod.
Yeah, right.
That's right. Yes.
He was my favorite. He was my favorite Transformer. Rodimus was my favorite Transformer growing up. I got him for Christmas that year,
his introduction is perfect for all the kids who Prime. He was their dad, but Rod would be like their Transformer best friend, and his introduction scene is perfect. They're just fishing. It's not like he needs to eat the fish. He's just doing it to spend time with a kid. Yeah. And I can so easily imagine before, like the kid's dad going like, "Hey, Hot Rod, I'm going to be away from the planet for a while, and my kid doesn't have a lot of friends. Could you look after him for a bit?" He's like, "Yeah, sure, man." He's just a kind of upstanding guy.
Was I the only one who watched the original Transformers movie and was incredibly disappointed that it wasn't Cup that they made the new Prime? I don't know, just something about the elderly mentor thing. It was like, yes, that guy.
That with a gruff voice.
Yeah. As far as the Transformers go, I never watched that growing up, but I do remember there was a family gathering where they put it on for some reason, and a couple of us, me and a couple of cousins, we were watching it, and a relative comes in and she's looking at what we're watching, and we explain it, and she says, "Only men would watch something like this." And then, as if sent by the god of comedy setup lines, my sister immediately walks into the room and asks, "What are you watching?" We said, "The Transformers movie." She goes, "Ooh," and sits down between us. And the relative just shook her head and left the room. It was perfect.
That's good writing.
I used to love Transformers, and then Michael Bay happened. And
yeah. I used to love Transformers because of Beast Wars. Beast Wars was a fantastic show as well. But then Michael Bay happened.
Okay, I don't know if I've talked about this before,
Lucas's talent, Bryan Singer's character. Go.
I made a comic a little while ago. It was a fan comic. I couldn't sell this without getting into trouble. But it was called Beast Wars Future. And the idea was, instead of prehistoric times or whatever, it takes place hundreds of millions of years from now. Humans aren't around anymore. There's barely any trace of us. The planet's completely different. Pangea is a thing again. The days are a little longer. and they all turn into bizarre future animals. From stuff like The Future is Wild and Dougal Dixon's After Man and Marc Boulez's The Main Animal of the Future, and just all these different works. And
the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen thing, where
they're like all new characters. You know, like some of them have a few old names, but I still designed, you know, what their bot modes look like and their personalities and everything. And it's this Lord of the Flies kind of situation where it's essentially a bunch of stranded kids just trying not to kill each other. And I did it to like make a statement about what it means to be a creature born of this planet, and you know, like especially that far ahead. And I don't know, it was just fun. It was something else.
That's on your that now people can actually see that, since it's for free, because you can't like sell it on your DeviantArt page. Am I correct?
Yes, it is in my DeviantArt gallery. It's just in a folder called Beast Wars Future.
I'm gonna find your
really
DeviantArt and share it in the live chat. So that
the great thing about it, the thing that was so gratifying about it, that was like validating, is when I put it like on some forums and such, where it was just all like Transformers fans, and most of them were like G1 fans who weren't even into Beast Wars. They still thought this was a good story. They still wound up reading the comic and really enjoying it, even though the characters were unrecognizable and it was a completely like removed story. They still enjoyed it as its own thing. And it's just that makes me so happy.
Hey,
That's awesome.
Steve, before we go,
Yes.
or before I go, could
I got one.
Could you and Dana, only because I see you guys and I know Dana is here in Georgia with me, can you talk about the fact, or give me your opinion, or some of your thoughts on the death or the dead Republican Party?
It's not that.
People keep looking at it and waiting for it to. I really do think what at least I grew up with. My dad was a Republican until he passed in 2013, and that the party that allowed that black man, my dad, to be a member, and a member who actually did a lot more than just vote Republican.
Yeah,
that's dead. And this new thing that people keep waiting for McCarthy or the McConnell to actually stand up and reclaim. I think it's dead now. And instead of this looking at and waiting for someone to be human, I really am looking more at the Democrats and the progressives and those on the left and saying, okay, we need to move on with the business of making sure that those of us in America who are believe in the democratic system are involved and being listened to, and that our needs are being met. But this looking at a party that is imploded and died seems to me a waste of time, valuable time.
I agree with you.
I don't know about you, but around here, that party has not imploded and died.
Almost everyone I know is a Trump
under the same name.
I think.
Okay, I have thoughts on the topic.
Hang on a second. I think that Biden had a line in his inaugural speech where he said something like, we don't all agree, but enough of us agree that we can pull the rest of us forward. And I think that's what the Democrats really need to do. I agree with you completely. I think reaching out to Republicans with the current state of the Republican Party, since the sort of the fanatics have kind of taken over, I think it's a waste of time. I agree with you. It
depends on how you reach out. If you say, here's what we're going to do, would you like to join us, or are you just going to stand over there and whine? Give them the opportunity to join in what we're doing, the progress that they're making, the lefty way, not forward and left. Let's be clear on that shit.
Oh yeah, progressive. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is what's happening. Do you want to join it? And if not,
well, and we're not going to lead with end of capitalism because we'll lose everybody.
Oh no, we won't lead with end of capitalism, but
I mean, that's the thing. It's like okay, I get it.
Super capitalism.
It's like I get it. Capitalism's bad. Just let's try to get a few more. Let's get some shit done first before we start throwing out the end of capitalism thing.
We'll ask them to help with the. We ask them to help with the problems that are caused by capitalism. Help them with homelessness. Help them with
right.
But then when they say, oh wait, but no, the homeless people need to put up about the bootstraps. So it's just like, okay, I'll give some food, something like that, but they just need to work hard or something like that. I think, and then I will stop there. It's just like, okay, you can't be convinced, but like, hopefully they can help. Hopefully they can help.
Yeah, that's
and then maybe if they're,
I will absolutely take their money.
Yeah,
I'll take their food for the food banks as it were. But if like, and they'll try to kind of like tell them how I see the world. But if they disagree with how I see the world, then it's just like I won't do any further agitprop because then I will irritate them, and I know how much I irritate some people.
I think the
isn't that always an important step? One, set realistic goals. You're not going to eliminate capitalism on day one.
I think
I know, but I still have to like. I have to believe.
You're not going to eliminate on day 10 either.
I have to, but we have to demand change today because if we compromise and wait for change to tomorrow, then we demand change tomorrow. But then they'll ask us to compromise and change for next week, and then ask for change for next week. Then they'll ask us to compromise to change for next month, and ask for change for next month. Then they'll ask us to change for compromise for change for next year.
The question is, what kind of change can we get today that leads to greater change in the future?
Yeah,
and we stop everything now. I mean, it is a question of what's achievable now versus. I mean, you can have both. You can have you take that big goal and you look at how do we have smaller goals that lead us toward that big goal, and that is the change that you ask for today, leading into change for next week, with also some flexibility for sometimes you don't get the change on Tuesday that you were hoping for, so you punt that back to Wednesday and you try again.
Yeah,
but you be happy with the progress that you make along the way. Because
my problem with that though is that it takes a lot longer for us to make progress than it does for Republicans to undo it. You know, like we spend years making a teensy bit of progress, and then they drag us so much further back. So it's
unfortunately, that's kind of the way life works. I mean, like it's a whole lot easier for me to lose muscle and put on weight.
I know, but what I'm saying is, as a result,
like
we have swung
the progress in the minds of people.
But what I'm saying is, as a result, our country has swung so far to the right, and I just don't know how much further we can go before we implode.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I'm sorry. I believe, and I forgive me. I'm just learning everybody's name and personality. I think it was some random geek who said something about compromise. And we are in a heterogeneous society. I live in a house. I'm a caregiver to my mom and with my partner. None of it. I mean, we want different things to eat. We must compromise. Compromise on principle is one thing, but compromising, moving us in a direction where we can all get a part of what we want is what must go on. This all or nothing is fundamentalism. And that's what got us in this bullshit right now.
My friends are still suffering and dying because of capitalism. So
that's why. What you were just saying.
I have to be their sugar daddy. I'd be their sugar parent in order for them to be able to eat. So that's also where I am at too.
What Carl just said about what you just said about compromise, like that's why I am not as upset about, for instance, the proposal for $1,400 checks as opposed to $2,000 checks, right? I still would rather it be more. I would rather it be a lot more and a lot more frequently than just another one-time payment. But I get the idea of let's put something forward that we think has a chance to pass.
Right. Let's get what we can get.
Yeah, and build from there. On principle, do I think it's enough? No, of course not. Do I think we should have been doing more during the pandemic to pay people to stay home and to support, and so to make sure that they can pay their bills and support themselves this whole time? Yes, God, yes. We should have been sending monthly checks to people this whole time. Not just, we'll send them $1,200 back in June and then another $600 in December and then maybe another $1,400 in the next few weeks. Like, we should have been doing this all along. So I think I'm totally on people's side when they say this isn't enough. But in terms of like political reality,
enough, but still be glad that something is happening.
Yeah, and in terms of
I think some random geeks point is good in that we have to demand upfront right away exactly what we want.
Absolutely.
Say, for example, like equality, right? Something we don't quite have yet, but we still keep demanding it, and over time it gets better, and we have to be okay with that process, that over time it gets better. Like, for example, as Black people, we don't have equality yet, but there's no point in history in which I would want to go back, right? And live in that time, right? Because it has progressed.
Half is the worst.
Yeah,
Right.
You know,
I'm sorry,
but we still have to
just wanted
demand
make
it.
my last point for today before we go off the air, like about the progress and about the things like
Yes.
that, because I find it like, at least for myself, in my mind, the progress that I've gone through is quite spectacular. Because like maybe a couple of years ago or something, my views were quite different on all the things. It's when I started watching Steve actually. And since then, I've kind of progressed on the trans issues, really. 2 years ago was the first time when I saw one of my first Jessie Gender video. And I liked her. I liked what she was doing, but I couldn't just get out of my head this. I talked about this already. This weird. People call it something like Uncanny Valley or something. It's when you're seeing something pretty close to what you're used to, but not quite what you're used to, and then your brain just goes haywire and gets creeped out. And I thought, oh my God, am I a transphobe? Am I a bigot? Am I a bad person? And here's what I figured out. That's the thing. There are two types and two components to any like bigotry, not just bigotry, but to any homophobia, transphobia, anything. There are two components. The first is the bigotry, the rugged traditionalist, I hate all the people who are not like me thing. And the second one is that Uncanny Valley component, is like you're just not used to it, and your brain is weirding out of it. And the first thing, you really, if a person is convinced of this thing, then probably the person has some differences which are irreconcilable. If the person just thinks that, it's probably a waste of time to talk about. But the second thing is easily cured by exposure. That's why actually having gay people and trans people and everybody else in your media is a good thing, because it works. Because people like me who weren't used to it and their brain just went a bit haywire on them back in the day are now totally okay with it. I just watched the Philosophy Tube video and I thought Abigail was amazing, by the way.
Oh yeah, that's a great video.
Yeah. And so basically, shout out to everybody from the Jessie Gender Patreon community who is watching right now. I love you guys, absolutely. I know some of yours, absolutely.
I do
the
have
community. It's amazing.
I do have one last thing to bring up very quickly. How does John DeLance take? So now that Q has been corrupted by QAnon. How does John DeLance handle that now?
Oh, I think that needs to be an episode. I think there needs to be a Star Trek episode where Q like pops into a QAnon meeting and he's like, "Okay, here's what we're gonna do."
So, any other final points? Last call for final points.
I got one.
I grabbed my Doctor Who sock.
Oh, that's nice.
Show us.
Yeah.
Nice.
I have a take.
Please.
That is
final takes.
Okay.
Final takes, because the show is ending soon. So let's do final takes.
So the talk of the Republican Party dying, I don't think that will happen for a cynical reason. And I believe that the Democratic Party, at least as it is, requires them. They have dual masters at the moment, where they have to both finance their campaigns and appeal to their voters. And more as wealth inequality grows, those are opposing forces. And if the Democrats do not have a viable Republican Party to say, well, we would like to do these things for you voters, but we can't, they will lose their donors. And so they will not take the necessary steps while they have the chance to destroy the fractured Republican Party. There are things that they could be doing. What do you call it? Supporting the ousts of everyone involved in the insurrection, including the many House and Senate members who were encouraging the sort of thoughts that led to it. They could be taking a lot of steps to formalize redistricting more than they are now and focusing on that. they could be trying to do everything they can to provide as much help and push as hard as possible so that looking forward, the working class that was ignored by both parties for so long would view them as their heroes again, but they can't because they still need their donors.
Yeah, exactly. The Democrats are in the endless view of trying to appeal to their base of the progressives and left and liberals that want like Medicare for all, want like a higher minimum wage, want like a universal basic income and stuff like that. But their donors don't want that. That's the problem. But
at base, they're still capitalists.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I've summed it up for a while. If you go one word for each party, Republicans are evil and Democrats are useless.
Yes, exactly. So it's like
that's the thing, though. I think on some level they are trying to cost themselves the midterms so that once they lose that, they can then fall back on that excuse of Republicans. Whereas now they have control of all three branches. So not Points now, it's much harder for them to get away with that excuse.
Should be harder to get away for them to get right the next
Geek, I know you have a plug you want to do. Does anybody else have any final takes before we end the show, which we're doing imminently?
I finished fixing the dog.
Awesome.
My final take is this, that we were discussing George Lucas and why during the production of Phantom Menace, why weren't the people out front saying, don't you see this? This is crap. This is what
right.
And if we can recognize that with a bullshit movie, then we should be able to ask people. I'm not looking to AOC or any human being who's sitting in the Capitol right now to save me. That's our job. We should be agitating. We need to be getting up and saying, sign a petition. If it's not your thing to march or to go, do something to say the okie doke is over. And if you're afraid of that, don't be, because we're not going anywhere. We're right here with you. But the very idea to let white supremacy and anti-democratic ideas prevail because I'm too scared of an opinion or a tweet or an idea, then you should not be there. We don't need to tear down capitalism. We need to modify it. We need to tear down our society. We need to be involved in our government, like this woman, the crazy woman from my state, from Georgia.
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
The sad thing is that crazy woman in Congress doesn't narrow it down nearly enough.
That's Dana's member of Congress.
Sorry,
that's Dana's member of Congress.
I voted against her, I promise.
Why didn't you do more voter fraud, Dana? Why didn't you do more voter fraud to stop her from winning?
I have principles, Stephen Clay Shives.
Clavin, that's your middle name. It's nice middle name, actually.
She busted out the full name. It is a nice middle name. She busted out the full name on me.
Carl, are you done?
I am done. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not going to go on my own thing again because actually, from an hour from now, will be Social Justice Alchemy. Plasma Durham Death was like asking, "What is Social Justice Alchemy?" It's just a show that I do every Sunday now with John Brockman, Little Arno, Tom McDonald, Jamie J. Might be joining us, Mehmet, and today we have a very special guest of Chris Ciasti will be joining us. Cool. It's a bunch of anarchists that sit around and yap about whatever. We'll probably talk about politics. We like to try to radicalize liberals, even though some of us get infuriated talking to liberals, but that's the thing. But we yap about like whatever. Chris Ciasti is going to be on, so it'll be interesting. I'll drop the link there for today's shows. Is for you to go over there. It's up and live. You can say hi in the live chat as well. And but I also have a YouTube channel, a Twitch channel, Summer Geek. Dana Cole has a YouTube channel as well. So
I do. I have a real address, you guys. Thank you so much. Like, it's not just a bunch of gibberish. It's Dana Cole Dares. So,
nice. I like
channel. Then quick plugs for our other friends here. Nick Anderson has a webcomic, Planet Ripple. So the best way to find out where you can get it and get a preview chapter of the book is planetripple.com. There's a link there. And Nick Anderson does have a YouTube channel, which he hasn't put up a YouTube video yet. He's been working on commissions and volume 6 of Planet Ripple, but there's a lot of good content on Nick Anderson's YouTube channel. I am done now.
I will post a video
I have a
soon.
really quick question. Some random geek. Have you ever considered a career as an auctioneer? Because I mean, you just like, okay, I've got 10. Do I have 10? Do I have 15? Do I have 20?
But what people
That's
understand
way too capitalist for him.
It is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Nice.
And sold to the worst capitalist here.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, Quark was doing that on QS. The last episode of like Star Trek Deep Space Nine that we were watching in the Trek which you can do every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And this week is going to be the next episode of Firefly.
Yep. Our Mrs. Reynolds.
Mrs. Reynolds, thank you.
Reynolds.
Oh, charity links as well.
Don't forget the charity links. And of course, and
with spoilers.
And Geek, as always, thank you for your continued unpaid labor as the unofficial producer of the show. Just like busting out all the. I love it because I never asked him to do that. I never said, "Hey, could you help out?"
I do it because I do it from my ability.
He just sort of started stepping in and wrapping up the show, and I'm totally cool with it. But I'm just like, I'm not. You're not the producer, but you kind of are. But yeah. So anyway, thanks everybody for being here as always. Thanks everybody for watching. And a month from now, we'll come back and do it again. So take care, everybody, and. Thanks. Patreon.com/Steve Shives. There's my plug. If you think this is,
so what time is what time is the Hangout on Geeks thing? Because I might like pop in and say hello and.
It's 2 p.m. Eastern. 2 p.m.
at the top of the coming hour.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.